My name is Brian. I'm from Uber. I manage the Uber's open source program kind of office. We are still building it. Um, so when I first joined Uber, the open source program or open source program office concept was very vague. Like we had a program running because like all other companies, we use a lot of open source software. We create a lot of open source software, but we never had someone that really help facilitate the whole process and policy. So I was hired to do that. So the first thing that came to my mind, or first thing I came to my realization is try to figure out what's the full scope of open source program, or you want to call open source program office. They just call it OSPO for now, like use the name. So this is a full scope of a common open source program office need to cover. There's a two parts. So when we talk about open source software in a company, there are three kind of activity most of the time. You either consume open source software, you contribute to the upstream open source software project, or you create new open source software. And you can kind of divide it by two big parts. One is inbound, you take things inside your company, and the other part is outbound. You put things outside of your company. So those are big two categories, but when you look into it, it's kind of complicated because when you put things out or you take things in, it's not just engineering practice. There's some IP implication there. So what's the company's policy when we push something out, share our intellectual property to external? And when this external facing, then you talk about like comms. You talk about, are we okay with sending this kind of message? Because whenever you do something external, there's always an implication to the business. It depends on who you ask for. So if you look at the full scope, it's kind of complicated. And for someone to manage the full scope, it requires a lot of different skills. Like you need to know the license. Like there's a bunch of different open source licenses. Each one of them have different implications. Which one is better for us? And you also need to be able to speak the language to talk to the attorney inside the company. So they speak very different language. You need to be able to understand that. And then you also have a big chunk of stakeholder are engineers, because they are the people that are doing the daily work. They use open source software, or they want to create open source software. They also speak a very different language than attorneys, so you need to be able to understand both language and try to bridge them and get them into a consensus. And so you need to know how to communicate across different area, different expertise. And you also need to have some kind of strategy, like for example, a big question is, why are we doing open source? Like, why are we creating open source? So you need to have an idea of what's the strategy, how does it align with our business goals. Those are, from skill set perspective, they are very different skill sets. Like, you need to have engineering practice, you need to be technical, you also need to have the software skill, you also need to know the legal languages. It's very complex, like the whole scope is very complex. You need a lot of different areas of expertise to help you. So one person, and maybe someone is really good, but for me, I am not good, so I need a lot of different experts to help me to navigate the whole scope. Also, in most of the companies set up, those experts are not in the same team. They are usually from different organizations. Usually the attorneys are on the legal department, and you have engineers either under R&D or org, or some company has a research org. Those are the people from different teams. How do you put them together? There's also another thing that you have to take care during building the open source program office. So if you look at the nature of an open source program office in a corporation, is all about collaborations. A lot of skills, you can find the skill set in each group, each people. They are all very skilled experts in your company, but how do we put them together to work together? There's a collaboration problem, right? How do you do that? On top of that, it's very important to understand, like, so what exactly are we talking about the program? Like, the program is a very vague idea. What are we talking about here? So are we talking about a program that basically only work with internal stakeholders? Like, everything we do is internal. For example, like, we only care about our own open source software. The open source software that we use, we don't talk to anyone outside the company at all. Or do we still need to, like, work with our communities. For example, if we create open source project, is this open source program office responsible for building a community around our project, promoting our project? When we push our source code upstream, who is maintaining the relationship with the upstream maintainers or the project or even the foundation? Those are the questions that someone has to decide. Depends on who is your executive stakeholder. Someone has to decide that, right? The scope of the program. And then the next thing is the challenging part is you might have everyone, all the experts that I mentioned in your team. Then you're lucky that you can, control and work with everyone within the same reporting structure. Things would be a little bit easier. But I think most of it could be wrong, but my observation is most of the open source program office leaders have to work across different teams. Like especially the legal teams usually is outside of the reporting structure of the open source program office. So you have a metric system that you have to navigate. You need to know who's the stakeholder, who makes the decision, how much capacity do they have to give to you to help you, how do you put them together? They all have different priorities, different timelines, different agenda, or different perspective of what open source program office is. So this is something you have to work on. And when you talk about like the program, and there's also a budget you talk about, and then you probably need to work with your program management office in the company. So it depends on what kind of program management office structure you have in the company. You decide how you can work with other people. So some company has a centralized program management office. They have all the policy templates, the process, everything that you have to follow. And then you have to try to see how your open source policy and process fit into your corporation's program management office scope. And some companies have the more coordinated, like each department has their own program management office. They get to decide their own policy, the process, and budget. And it's probably a little bit easier for you to do that when you have the kind of structure, because then you can set up your own policy. But again, you still need to coordinate across all the program management office. So these are things that you have to look at and then try to decide what would be the best fit for the company or what your constraints within those frameworks. And then we talk about, once you have that, then you need to talk about process. Why do we need a process? Because we are not just talking about developing work, right? In the beginning I talked about this policies about license. Those license implications is really high, so you have to set up a process like how do you get things approved? As simple as how do I get things approved to go outside of the company? So you always need a process. Most people don't like process, but you need to have a little bit of process, otherwise you won't be able to get things done. And then you have to decide, okay, how much process do I want to put in place so people don't hate me, but they still follow the process. I remember when I first communicated to the whole organization saying that, hey, everything that you use, you want to take into the company, you actually need approval, like formal approval. Like here is a policy, here are the license that we approve, and here are the things that you actually need, like real approval. Like you cannot just, okay, I'm going to use it. I sent out an email, and within the 10 minutes, I got probably 200, 300 emails telling me that this is ridiculous, you are reducing our productivity, like have you really thought about this? We have a tool, we can talk about it. But it is very important, like the process actually, the process and the people and the culture are actually, they tie up together. When a company has a very rigid process, it also put around some constraint how people's creativity. But it's like chicken and egg. Sometimes you have the culture first, and then you have process around it. Sometimes the process kind of define the culture without knowing it. So whenever put up a process, it's very important to understand the implication of the process might change the culture potentially. On top of that, the stakeholders are very, very complex. Very, very complicated. So at least there are four different categories of stakeholders that an open source program office has to handle. One is the two most common one is legal and engineer. So engineers are those people that actually are doing all the work. They have the request and need to work with around open source software. The legal teams are governing the IPs, our compliance, and make sure that everyone is protected. But if you are doing creating open source project, or even if you are very vocal about how you use open source project, you might also need to talk to your product team and then the business. Make sure that every single message we send out to the community, to the public, are aligning with what the product team and the business team want. Especially when creating an open source project, the product team has to be comfortable with sharing this source code to outside. And we also, the business organization also need to be very comfortable that we don't accidentally leak something that would enable our competitors. Basically, those are the 4 big ones. So financial is very interconnected metrics, and you have to handle not just internal, of course external, in a very cross-functional governance way, and the project execution is kind of tricky because you are taking a lot of different people's priority and you try to move forward in the same direction. But if you look at these 4 categories, they, by nature, they have different way of looking at things, even just looking at one thing. So this is something the open source program office has to try to navigate within the company. There's no one way to do it because every company is very different, and the person that you work with is also very, very different. So the conclusion I have is actually very, very complicated, and there are a lot of challenges. On top of that, you also want it to be very inclusive. After all, you are building an open source culture in the company. Essentially, ultimately, there's something that's an end goal, like for most people. How do you include everyone? You probably want everyone to be able to come, like probably, I correct that. So you definitely want everyone to contribute because you don't want to do this by yourself. It should be very transparent. All the decisions should be very transparent. Otherwise, it would be just. Otherwise, it would be very hard for you to be able to take the whole company moving to the same direction, because this is not something that you can do by yourself. You also need to form a community within the company. Have a lot of contributors inside the company is willing to help you to shape the open source program office vision. And also, ideally, if there's a meritocracy decision process that we can seek for consensus, it would be ideal. Most of the time, it's very challenging. And then, to be able to do that, you want to have a very safe environment to collaborate, including, like, you need to be very transparent, you want to communicate very well, you want to listen to everyone's needs and make sure that you address everyone's concerns, and of course, you want to be inclusive. And if you are doing everything, and you navigate everything that I just said, you are somewhat successful, you might get to the level like this. This is what we have today. We have 350 projects on GitHub. That doesn't sound like really scary, but if I put some timeline perspective, since 2012, that was our first time open source anything on GitHub. We, on average, open source 1 project per week. So last week alone, we open sourced 2 huge projects on GitHub. Both are on the cloud space. And we have 3 community projects. So it sounds like successful. Then this happened. So then, I mentioned that there are a lot of stakeholders, right, in the company. So people come to you like, hey, so Brian, so I know that you send out the update, you have some good, success here. So what's the strategy here? So why are we open source so many projects? So how are those projects doing? So how can you justify why we are doing those open source projects? What kind of value does it really bring to the company? So we have 3 community projects. So how big is the community actually? So those bunch of questions just start coming to you when you are a little bit more successful, and then they actually don't ask questions like this. The way they ask questions is exactly, hey Brian, I don't think we should continue doing this because I don't think so. Or I said, hey, I think hosting meetup is a waste of time because what do we get from that? Or some people just say, hey, I think it costs the company too much to maintain our open source project here. See, our maintainer needs to spend time talking to the community, people ask questions, and they need to review the code. Or, they say like, hey, why do you even approve that open source project? I don't think the open source project really, stand for Uber's quality or whatever the person wanted to say. That's a very true reality that most of the open source program office leaders, or if you're running open source program inside a corporation will say. in the beginning, I was very like overwhelmed. I think, oh my God, why are people so mean to me? Like asking me all those questions, like how do I handle them? And they all sound legit. Like those questions all sound legit. Then I met this guy. Then one thing that through our collaboration, I realized one thing is very important is that opinion is not bad. A lot of people give you opinions in the company, especially when we talk about open source. A lot of people think they probably actually do have a lot of experience, but open source space is so big that you have experience from different domains. They don't actually apply across different processes. Even just from if you are working with infrastructure work and comparing to the web technology, the community probably prefer different best processes. So even if you are even if that person is very experienced in one domain, it doesn't really apply universally when we talk about how the company should do things going forward. So, fact is, how do we get the facts instead of like getting buried into all those opinions? We need a lot of data. So we do other things. We need the data. We need to analyze the data, and that's when Bitergia comes into the picture.
Okay, I have my mic. Can you hear me? Okay. So my name is Manrique. I think I didn't introduce myself at the beginning, so now you know me. Complicated name, sorry. I'm working on Bitergia, and this is more or less part of our motto. This idea of, okay, without data, you are just another person without an opinion. And we are not saying that opinions are bad, but when you have opinions based on data, probably the opinions get stronger, and you can justify them a little bit better. So basically, this is when everybody, as Brian said, you realize, okay, I need data. Our technical mindset said, oh, that's easy. Let's go fishing for data. Basically, we're using GitHub, so let's go for the GitHub API, get all the data available there. Oh, we are using other stuff, so let's start having fun getting data. And this is going to be a little bit an explanation of the typical journey that open source program offices managers, even when they hire us, run through this process. That, okay, let's get data. What I should be looking at when I'm looking for data or fishing for data, as Brian said in the beginning, mostly of the activity is around contributing to existing projects or releasing my own open source project. So let's go for them and identify the data sources I need to track. And this is where things start to become a little bit complicated, because not everything is happening in GitHub. Not everything is in Git. Not every contribution is coming through a Git commit. You can have people filling issues. You can have people filling ideas or submitting ideas through a mailing list. You can be discussing in the Slack, IRC, or whatever communication channel you are using, and those are also valuable contributions to your projects and to your process. So you need to, okay, but you're still having fun getting data, so go for them. There are even tools. If you look for community health analytics project from the Linux Foundation, you have these open source tools like Grimoire Lab that support like around 30 different data sources: Discord, GitLab, GitHub, Jira, Baxilla. So okay, I have the tools, I have the knowledge, I have the power, so let's have fun getting data. And then you start to feel, I love this slide, I start to feel, okay, I'm controlling the matrix around my company. I know everything about that. And you can even end with dashboards like this one, and this is a Bitergia dashboard, so you can blame us for this. This is the first step of the dashboard we built for Uber at the beginning. They hire us, they produce the dashboard, and they say, okay, we are going to have fun with this data. And you have data around things like the community. I can see how many people are contributing in the different areas. So, okay, if you look from outside, okay, it's charm, let's play with it. We have the dashboard and panel ready with activity, so I can see how many projects, what's the level of activity on each project by data source, by company. So, okay, let's play with that. And also performance. I can see how people are dealing with issues, pull requests when they are coming from my company, from outside my company. I can also see how fast are we solving issues or attending pull requests or merge requests, or how fast, how many iterations are needed when closing a pull request, how many conversations do you need to have around that. Okay, plenty of nice screenshots, I would say, about that. But the reality is when you talk with the managers, after a while, like 3 months or something like that, is you produce a bunch of data and they start thinking, what do I need all this data for? I have all these different panels, like 20 different panels that I can navigate through. I get lost. Because probably the strategy you are trying to achieve with that is not the right path to follow. So this is more or less the feeling that even some customers have at the beginning, like, okay, they don't talk with Bitergia in terms of, okay, I can play with the data, I have data knowledge, and they start like digging into the data and get lost about the value of the data itself in terms of that. So I usually take this quote from Sun Tzu about the strategy and tactics. You need both to be in place. Probably tactics about, okay, let's go for the data is a good one, but you need to start with the strategy. What I want to achieve with all my open source program office, what I want to achieve as a company when I am releasing open source, what I'm trying to achieve when I'm contributing to projects that I depend on. And those questions are the first step. So we take something similar to the Deming circle approach that basically says, how is the OSPO when you are running analytics path? So first of all, you need to start with a strategy, as I said. Like, there could be different goals that you are trying to achieve when you are running an open source program office. Probably it's about transparency. I want to show to the communities outside, to the developers, hey, I am doing this open source thing. So come to me. We are charming, we are welcoming people. Also, it's about self-awareness. It's okay, I need to know where I am, because if I need to lead a change, at some point I need to know where I'm starting. And I have some bad experience, like people discussing, okay, let's put Gerrit to do code review, because we are going to be faster doing code review. And I ask, how fast are you now? We are slow. We are going to be faster with Gerrit. Okay, but how much slow are you now? No, we are slow. Okay, give me a number, because if you don't have that number, how do you know that you are improving? Okay, you have a new tool. Nice, cool. You are cooler in the player, but you know. Also, when you have policies to deal with, like, okay, to do this, you need to go to Bacilla, fill an issue, then start a discussion. You can test if those policies are the ones being put in place in reality. Because probably you can, as Brian said, you put a lot of processes, but the truth is the community and the projects are behaving differently. So you need to adapt your processes and your governance to that. And also could be also motivational. And we know a lot of people looking for data just to say, hey, I'm the #1 on whatever area of the project, because I want to say that to my marketing people, because I'm going to be in this whatever conference to say, hey, we are the top contributors to whatever area of the project. And I'm sure statistics are able to say to you that in whatever area of the project, because we are used to play with that data a lot, and it's like you can always find, like, in the last week, in the last month, in whatever area, in code review, in answering questions, you can always say that. Many people are using or have a strategy around, okay, I need to attract talent. And we know some companies that move to the open source ecosystems just to say, we are cool, so please send us a CV so we can see how many people are contributing, people from outside the company. Oh, so if they are contributing with this quality of code, probably they are interesting for us, and things like that. So that's an approach of having a strategy. I would have tried to do some kind of exercise of putting at least two typical goals, like, okay, I would like to, in my company, to have worldwide talent attraction. I need people to see, okay, this company is cool to send my CV or my resume to work for them, because they are doing this open source thing. And also, it's a charming company. It's perceived as this company is cool, they're having this fun around open source, they have been in these conferences. So those are goals I would like to achieve. That is also like dividing into the typical worldwide domination or the worldwide leadership for a company we would like to achieve. Okay, the next point is, okay, you have these goals clear, right? So now, even in your own company, I'm sure you have a goal or motto saying, we are going to be in 5 years this thing. So the next thing is put that goals into questions that could be solved or at least answered with numbers. So basically, you can go having questions about the community or about the activity or the performance, typical things about that. So in the same exercise, for example, some questions related with the goals could be something like where contributors are coming from. Where are the people? If I want worldwide contributors, I will be able to look at worldwide contributions. How much engagement do my projects get when I release them? Because if it's only my people contributing to them, what's the difference between having them as an open source project or not? Well, typical question is, why we are releasing this as an open source project? how many new contributors do I have? So I need to identify how many people from outside my company are contributing to these projects. Because again, if it's only my company, what's the goal of being open source on that? Things like how many core, regular, casual contributors are in the project, even how people are changing between these buckets. And when I'm talking about core, I don't know how many of you know about the bus factor, this idea of how many people you need to put in a bus and throw through whatever just to build the project, or to hire, or to buy to control the project. So the core developers could be like people doing 80% of the contributions, for example, in whatever area of the project. I mean, it could be Git, it could be mailing list, it could be answering questions in Stack Overflow. It could be also the regular people, the people that is doing 15% of the contributions, for example. And the casual ones, those that are doing, for example, 5% of the contributions on a specific period of time. And you can see also the evolution over time. Could be interesting to answer those questions. And of course, how I am dealing with external contributions. When someone from outside is sending me a pull request, I am being fair with them, or I am just, no, my boss said, look at our pull request first. And then you could have time to look at other ones' pull requests. And you know that usually that's how it ends. You don't have time for anyone from outside. But again, if you want to be a charming company or a welcoming company, you can look at that kind of questions to be solved. So next part is, I would say, development or customization. It depends a lot of the companies. And we know several examples, like, as I said before, usually big companies think, okay, I have the manpower, the capabilities, or whatever, to build this from scratch. So I am going to build a solution for doing this. Or I can go outside and see which other tools are out there, or even hire someone to provide this data to me. But at the end, you need to customize that at some point to provide those answers. Because usually, you go outside and there are tools out there. As I mentioned before, there are others that probably are developed by a community, but they are developed probably for the own needs of the community. So for example, they are supporting only the tools that the community is using, and things like that, okay? So my recommendation is usually don't start from scratch. There are communities outside, projects outside, like the Community Health Analytics for open source software from the Linux Foundation. I will mention that later, that is hosting several projects to do that. There are also tools available. So try to reuse existing tools, and if you find issues and pull requests, I am sure that, you could see improvements. You can send pull requests to them. And usually get this don't go alone. You know, if you want to be fast, go alone. If you want to be farther, go with someone. That would help a lot in this area. For example, okay, let's look at the tools. And I'm biased here because we are one of the main contributors to Grimoire Lab. But as I said, okay, it supports almost 30% of the data sources. It has some panels, as I've shown before, predefined to answer some questions. Also, there is a tool to manage the multi-identity of the people across the different data sources, even inside the same data source. You know, indeed, you can contribute using, for example, 2 mail addresses. And what does it mean? Do 2 people contributing? 1 people? It depends on the project itself. Also, it has a REST API to consume the data, so it needs to be integrated with the company-owned tools, business intelligence tools. People say, okay, that's going to be fun because we have the power to do that. And of course, it's 100% free open source software, free libre open source software. So, okay, let's go for it. And then, when it comes to reporting, okay, I have everything in place. I have the questions, I have the goals, and now I have these people, as Brian said, asking me questions. So I need a reporting system that should be consistent. And I said, if you are contributing, for example, to CNCF projects, you will be looking at dev stats. And if you are contributing to OpenStack, probably you are looking at Stackalytics. And then you start, okay, I have 2 different ways to look at the data, but my manager only needs a PDF written each month, for example. How to do that? So the idea of customizing this to produce a uniform system that allows me even answer, like, I need to go deeper, and I will show some examples later, is a good way. And the other thing is transparency matters. If you release something like this internally, it's going to be okay from the perspective, okay, I can see not only how that we are doing open source, we are also able to see how we are performing doing open source. If you release this externally, you're also saying to the people in the communities, this is not only our open source project, this is also how we are developing open source projects, how we are dealing with you when you are contributing back, and things like that, okay? So, These are some, for example, answers to these questions, and I would say could call them metrics or insights, for example. And this is actually for your use case. Where contributors are coming from? When we release this panel with the map, well, you know there are data sources that you have information from geographical information. In GitHub, for example, and in Meetup, they have this information, so you can see where contributors are happening. And we were talking about this yesterday, about what do you think about when you see this panel, what changed in the company? I think that...
Yeah, we saw this back in November this year, when we decided to host the event internally, and then we generated this board. So if you can see, most contributors are from San Francisco Bay Area. So for me, when I look at it, I was like, I kind of failed doing my job because we have 12, 13 offices across the world. Why is all the contribution from San Francisco? So I dug into the data a little bit. It turns out 99% of the open source projects were created in the Bay Area. And then I look into it a little deeper. Actually, there's more to that because there are some offices they just don't have enough senior engineers to mentor them to do those activities, or they will not assign the project that probably they think is interesting enough to create or share with externally. Some offices they don't even know that Brian is here. They don't even know who I am. So it actually helped me. It guides me to, okay, I have to start looking at what's going on within the company. It cannot be a headquarter kind of centric program. Otherwise, it's not going to scale. And people, it's not. Again, my goal is I want it to be universally, globally available to everyone. I can, if you want to know our next step, feel free to talk to me offline. I'm more happy to share with you.
And this is one example, but some data sources, I mean, some areas of the contribution, you don't have that geographical information. But for example, you can also have time zone information. So again, it's another way to see where contributors are coming from. Probably is this size of the wall, but at least you can guess what's going on there also about that. Another interesting question is how much engagement do my projects get? And this is an example of how many active repositories is Uber nowadays maintaining and the evolution over time. So okay, it's like 350 projects around there. But if you look at the numbers, only half of them are active. And you can also see how many activities from outside Uber, because also, as I said before, it's only a project with Uber activity. What's the difference between having this open source or not? I mean, from a manager perspective, is okay, if we are dealing with this in an open source way, it's nice in terms of transparency, but this is the same revenue if I have it inside my office, for example. Okay? So a potential next question would be, how many new contributors do I have? And this is evolution over time in Git contributions, I think. So you can also see how many people from outside is coming. And I would like to show you this live, because this is not my laptop, so blame me if I broke something for you, Brian. Okay, so this uber.biter.io, as I said before, you can play with it, you can play with the data. We have here the data sources. Probably the menu is going to change in next weeks. This is for community. You can see the demographics of the community for the last, okay. So if you go this, you can see how many people is joining all the projects I have, and how many people is leaving. I mean, not active anymore. So you can have the demographic of your community in that area. Of course, the last two bars probably are the last 3 or 1 month, I think. So probably they are still active. But it gives you an idea of the trend around your projects. And as I said before, you can have some fun here, like for example, let's add a filter like the author, and this is where the magic happens. I mean, it's easier if I go to organization, author name is not yours. Boom, you have there all the contributions from outside Uber coming to the projects. And the trends are quite similar. So again, but you can also keep having fun with the data, and this is where our technical mindset starts to get lost, and oh, I want to play with this. So let's see what happened, I don't know, here, for example, August 2014, I can click here, there, and I can see the pattern of the people not getting active anymore. And it looks like, okay, people do a contribution during the 1 month, and then they leave. But there is some people doing things like a couple of months ago, right? So if we click there, we have Michael Freelist that has done some contributions lately. And Michael is working in Salesforce as far as I know. So basically, you can say to your manager, okay, this is the value of going open source. This is like signing a partnership with an external company contributing to my projects without dealing with all the bureaucracy of doing that partnership. It's just going open source there. We have these people and still active in my community having this engagement. This is, again, is one example of the things you can do here. I think if I go back to present, this is going to be presenting. Okay. The contributions, how many people are doing 15% of the contributions, and you see big bars are the people doing the 5% contribution, more or less. So most of the contributors are casual contributors. Yeah, I think so. I need to check yeah, that's it. And usually that says it's aligned with this Pareto idea of, I don't know if the Pareto balance between 20% of the people do 80% of the work, so you can compare with that, for example, and you can see how it's evolving that. And the last question, for example, is how fast are we dealing with external contributions? As I said before, you can filter, but I'm going to show you again a live example because you're not going to see that easily there. So this is more or less the efficiency panel about GitHub Issues, I think. Yeah, that's it. So basically, there you have information about, in those charts, it's more about the evolution over time in things like the relationship between issues opened and issues closed. Issues closed versus issues opened by month. So you can see a trend there about how we are dealing with that work effort. And also the lead time in terms of how's the average time to close issues, from time to open to time to close. That's more or less what it says. And I'm going to look at this number here that says the median time to close issues for all the projects. So basically it's around 6 days. But we can go and say, let's look at, okay, I think I can do this. You were apply, okay, you are over the median, but let's look for the pull request, but you can do the same thing for pull request. You can go here, you go to efficiency, for the last year, for example, and there they are quite fast solving issues, closing pull request. Let's look for Uber, okay, it's around 5-6 hours to close a pull request. You can see, okay, last year was this, what's the year before? What's the value of the year before? Okay, it's almost the same, so we are stable on that point. But let's do the other way around. How fast are we solving issues not from Uber? 1.5 days for the last year. Is that a good or bad number? I would ask you from the manager perspective, it depends, I think. But at least you can see, okay, if we want to improve this, we know now the numbers. We know that we are this when we are dealing with our own issues. And this is our number when we are dealing with pull requests sent from outside. And we can see how it was 1 year ago. Okay, it's going stable, but not that good because it was faster last period of time. But again, this is the way you can discuss with your manager about what should be doing next based on our strategy. And now you have numbers to say this. And again, you can go each of the projects on the right, so you can filter by each individual projects and stuff like that. Going back to the presentation, I don't know how we are on time. Okay, I can see it. So basically, you're seeing all the paths. And The other big issue, from my point of view and our experience, is you need to be reviewing this periodically. Because once you put metrics on place in front of the people, people are going to try to cheat the metrics, and you know that. It's like, okay, if we are going to be aware or awarded or whatever, or rewarded, we are going to be to see how to cheat that metric at some point that our contributions are going to be faster or things like that. But on the other way around, on the other side, this can be used to change patterns. As you see, is when you're trying to get fitness and things like that, it's like they don't say to you, okay, go to the marathon from the day one. You start by making small steps. So you can use the metrics to start changing patterns in your company. Like, okay, I want people to attend more to the issues from outside the company. So let's put that metric on front in the dashboard. So when my people go to the dashboard or to the reports, I mean the dashboard, but it would be the reports you send to the manager, they see, okay, I need to improve this. So the next time I have a pull request, probably I'm going to look first for the people from outside instead for the people from inside because, okay, this is something I can manage at some point. And then once you see that the pattern is changing, remove that metric and put other one in place to make people go to the next step. Like, okay, we are seeing that you are closing merge requests faster, but the number of iterations with the people, we are not getting we are getting bad responses for the community outside because they are doing -1 in the pull reviews or things like that. So again, you can become a pattern changing in your company thanks to this. And as I said before, this is not something that we invented. I mean, there is a community around these topics discussing about this. This is CHAOS community. CHAOS stands for Community Health Analytics for Open Source Software. I know the name is quite aligned with the work being done there. It's a lot of chaos, I would say. It was set by the Linux Foundation, I think, 1.5 years ago in the Open Source Summit in Los Angeles, actually. So this is the second time I'm in Los Angeles to talk about this. And Grimoire Lab, for example, the tool I've been showing you how to make this dashboard is one of the foundation's projects of this initiative. And just to talk a little bit about the initiative is divided in 2 committees. There is one committee focused on defining metrics in terms of what are the metrics that open source projects, I wouldn't say should be looking at, but at least at some point the metrics that people are looking at when they are talking about health. Things like engagement, things like diversity, and then there are several, inside each committee, there are several working groups. There's a diversity working group, there is a growth, maturity, and decline working group, focused on metrics related with the topic. There is a risk committee, working group, sorry. And that's I would say, the more academic group. A lot of academics, they are discussing about metrics, how to formalize the process to release them. And then there is a committee focused on technology in terms of software that could be the one implemented the metrics defined in the metrics committee. In terms of, okay, there are tools outside that can be contributed to the project. They need to be at some point integrated. And Grimoire Lab is one of them. There are also Cregit. I don't know if you know about it. It's used for Linux kernel analysis mostly, but it could be used to analyze any JIT at the token level. I mean, there's not just line by line, but in terms of, okay, this function, which is the author of the function, how many changes this function has had, and stuff like that. There is also Augur from the University of Illinois, I think. I don't remember exactly the university which one. Danny, I don't know if you know better than me, but I don't know if it's Mississippi or Illinois or whatever. It's one of the universities contributing to the project. So it's I would say, pet project that is evolving quite interestingly about how to get data from GitHub mostly and produce some metrics as reference. And the other one is Prospector that was submitted by Red Hat when the group was founded. I think there is no activity around the project, but there's also a very interesting one about how to create reports about what's going on in the project based on some kind of model of maturity or something like that. So there's some mailing lists happening there and stuff like that. And this is more your part.
Promotion, we do have open source project. We try our best to maintain the up-to-date, give you the best quality as we can. With opensource.uber.com, if you find anything to use, so we do have open source project from machine learning, AI, infrastructure, mobile, basically the whole technology stack. Look at it. If you find anything that fits your needs, feel free to use it. if you encounter any trouble working with any project, you can contact me. I'm responsible for that. So you can also contact us if you find any way that we can collaborate. So I think we're open to Q&A. Any questions for us?
Yeah, actually we wanted to have some kind of open discussion at the end, or some minutes to, if you're already running some kind of open source program office, or you are running this kind of structure in your own company, what are your questions or your feelings about this? Okay, you have a question?
What metrics or reports do you find most useful in convincing people within the company who are uncomfortable with the idea of open source, or don't think there are people in companies who are hostile to open source? What, from all this information, do they find persuasive that yes, our company having these programs is valuable to the company?
So we need to repeat the questions for the recording. Basically, if I have understood, it's which are the metrics or reports that are most valuable for people that usually, I would say, they are not that in favor of doing open source, so to see what's the value of doing this stuff, right? I don't know if you want to ask from your own perspective or your own personal opinion, and then I can give mine.
My experience is there's no data you can even come with someone that doesn't want to believe in this. So I use it as a question is do we have a company-wide goal of why we are doing this? If not, we need to first answer that before we dig into data. My experience is I made a mistake of start showing data, and then I forgot that hey, actually we don't have a concept of why we are doing this. And also the data also need to be separated into two parts. One is outbound and the other one is inbound. So why are we doing outbound, like contributing to the open source project? Why? Do we want to get just branding, hiring, or do we generally believe that it's a good thing to do, or is it good for our business? Like someone has, like executive sponsor has answered the question before we can show the data. But I do believe that for most of the skeptical people in a company, they will come to you with a very strong opinion, and you can usually tackle with the really solid data. For example, if someone comes to you, I believe the open source project is hurting our brand name. You know, okay, let's look at how our brand awareness in the social media and hiring, ratios. Those are the things pretty easy to answer. But if the people or the person that has this question are you executive sponsor, then it would be a bit trickier for you to handle.